All right, you have it there. And of course, Hope Uzodinma has been sworn in and given his certificate of return as the governor of Imo State. And just as you rightly said it there, Justice Kekere said with the addition of the result from 388 polling units, Uzodinma polled a majority of the lawful votes and ought to have been declared the winner of the election by the Independent National Electoral Commission. And of course, there are a lot of talks with this outcome. A lot of people were not expecting the Supreme Court's decision upholding Hope Uzodinma as the governor of Imo State. In fact, there are a lot of talks of the god of Hope Uzodinma, but let's leave it as that. Let's start with you, Tony Nwaje. How would you see this judgment? Valid? Supreme Court, the apex court.
They've spoken, but the people of Imo are not happy with it. For me, we need to tell ourselves the truth. It was not expected at all. How can somebody who came forth and those cancelled votes in those polling units? I want somebody to educate me. Were they just lump sum given to? Given to Uzodinma, just like that. Was it the only one that contested? A lot of issues. But as I said, the Supreme Court, and I'm still waiting for the breakdown. This country, they give judgment, and maybe the next month, that's when you get the judgment. That is wrong. That is for me. I'm speaking like a layman. I'm not a lawyer. I think that should come first. Why hurry to give judgment when we then wait for 1 week or thereabouts to read the judgment itself? People, I think that people don't, all these controversies and all that is taken care of. First thing first. Now, there's all manner of conjectures from different places, and they are just seated. I don't know how Nigerian justice system works. Each day I try to understand it, but each day I get confused. First thing first, let's just have the judgment. You don't pronounce judgment and tell us tomorrow we'll release it to you. That's what's happening. As we speak right now, the budget of this country, we don't know the date. There's no breakdown yet. Months after, there's certain impunity that we allow in the system. We won't say because it's the judiciary, it's the Supreme Court. If they do something wrong, it's high time we talk about it. In Imo, something happened, and I know it's just the beginning. Something is coming up, just like he said earlier. The Action Alliance guy. Of course, he's when it comes to before he went to AA, he was validly elected. It was when he stepped into AA that Hope Uzodinma came up. So I see a lot of intrigues playing out. As we speak, there's confusion at the State House of Assembly. At the State House of Assembly, it's all dominated by PDP and all that. So where are we going to? Public perception matters a lot when we give judgment. But in Nigeria, it doesn't happen. They don't care. And so we're going to continue to have this kind of crisis. They sit down, they watch, they don't care. That's the way I'm going to put it for now.
Okay, thank you very much. Of course, we have really enjoyed the vibe Jordan showed me. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Okay, now with the Supreme Court's verdict, we know a lot of effect. He talked about the State Assembly now having a lot of PDP, and even the fact that Imo State will become an off-season state in the sense that the governor was not elected, or rather, we had the election in March, and now we're having another Supreme Court verdict in January. So in other words, the next election will be in 2024 and not in 2023, because he was elected in 2021, or rather he was given the judgment as a new governor in 2020. Now, aside from that, and of course state assemblies, we've also had contradictions with the INEC, saying INEC is to be faulted with electoral malpractices. What other effects, what other shortcomings are you seeing from this judgment?
Well, in the first instance, when you look at the whole thing, the role of INEC in it, despite the fact that the courts have decided that it's only the presiding officers that can cancel results, but in that case, the presiding officers for those affected areas actually did certified the results.
Yeah.
But then it became impossible for INEC to accept those results simply because the totality of those results from those affected areas, would push the votes, over the accredited voters. Then you will have over 100,000 plus, more than the people that were actually accredited to vote. So where did those results came from? And INEC viewed it that the presiding officers must have erred, by certifying those reports. Of course, they will certify those results simply because they do not have a total picture of the whole situation. So INEC rightly decided, to cancel the results in those affected areas where there were reported irregularities. Yeah. But that has been put to rest now because the Supreme Court has finally said, no, you cannot do that as long as the presiding officers did not cancel the result, irrespective of its effect on the overall election. That is, it will make the overall election invalid. Yeah. Because when you have total results more than the number of accredited voters, then how do you rationalize that? It will lead to challenge. So this is one angle which I think the Supreme Court has not considered. And maybe if they will consider it, we'll see it in their detailed judgment, which we are yet to hear. That is one angle to it. The other angle to it is, how do you rationalize a situation where the party that produced the governor does not even have representation in the State House of Assembly? So where are the voters?
Where's the popularity?
The people voted, for the candidates for House of Assembly for one party or the other party, and then chose not to vote for who is now the governor. So, there are things that are quite bewildering. You are quite puzzled. We can't rationalize it. It defies logic. So how do we situate this? Then take another angle to it, which is the reasons given in past cases by the Supreme Court, saying that you would have to call witnesses from each affected polling unit, in order to determine the veracity of the information being given by the defense, or by the applicant. But in this situation, the Supreme Court did not deem it necessary, to consider that as a basis to justify the results of it. So for me, I see it as this is an interest-driven judgment. That's the best way to put it. It's a fact and it's a truism that courts do consider public interest, when it comes to making decisions. So in some cases, the overall public interest influences judgment in some cases. But in this case, I don't think that is the case.
Okay, Ms. Saka, what's your take on this?
Well, they've touched, but I still have one or two things to add to it. I think there was a time I was involved in post-election analysis and tribunal matters of Emmanuel Udom of Akwa Ibom State. Okay. His first term, 2015 to 2019, when the then was it ACN candidate or was it APC? I don't know. I think APC went to court and it was trying to establish a case of disenfranchisement of some voters, and it brought some 2 APC chieftains. And from the appeal court to the tribunal, what I said, you cannot, because of 2-3 voters turn up because they are eminent Nigerians, prove or establish a case of disenfranchisement. You have to get every disenfranchised voter to come to the tribunal or the courts and what have you and testify under oath that yes, I was disenfranchised, I wasn't allowed to vote, and if I had voted, or if I indeed vote and my vote was actually or probably I was disenfranchised from the system, it was for so candidates. And by the time they collate such evidences and probably testimonies, they probably will arrive at yes, we should do this, we should not do this. That didn't come into play in this judgment. I would say the Supreme Court judgment, whether they like it or not is my opinion, was a validation of fraud. Because how can you tell me even in Animal Kingdom, when I mean Animal Kingdom, I'm not talking about the book, I'm talking about where you have dogs, donkeys, or camel. They want to vote. You cannot see the election stands when the animals, the numbers of voters outnumbers the actual population of animals involved in the process. So the Supreme Court, you see, they should not pee on my face and tell me it's raining. People might want to sound academical, they might want to come up with a lot of legal pros and what have you to back this travesty of justice, but it is nonsensical. Then secondly, there's an interesting thing. In December 12 or there, about the Supreme Court made the pronouncement that Uche Nwosu was validly nominated by the APC. Yeah. And now he has joint nomination even with Action Alliance. By the virtue of that, they discredited him. Now the question is this: Electoral stipulates that for you to be a governor, I think after the Amechi Omea case, the electoral act says you must participate in every process of the elections. That means from your party primaries to the election itself. Now, in the case of Uche Nwosu, because of that Supreme Court's pronouncement, Uche Nwosu participated in the primaries, but not in the election, because he didn't fly the flag of APC. Now, Opuzodima did not participate in the primaries based on that pronouncement, not participated in the elections. So whether you like it or not, Supreme Court pronouncements, precedents and what have you, has virtually cancelled out Opuzodima and Uche Nwosu. For me, unless lawyers want to come and start bamboozling us with their legal whatever words in their lexicon. And you see, when people trying to bring God into these things, I get infuriated. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, saying one man predicted on January 1st and everything. Are you trying to tell me that God is a God of, is a partial God? God will reward fraud? No, that's, you see, you see, when we say, it gives credence to the allegations and the allusions of people that alluded to the fact that Ononga was removed because of things like this. You cannot divorce it. The Supreme Court, yes, is the apex court. Their judgment, their verdict on everything is supreme, but doesn't make it right. How can you, with as a father, you now go back home, or as a mother, you go back home. You tell your kids that you rose to the highest, to the apex heights, or probably the apex of the legal profession as a Supreme Court justice. And you could tell them that, yes, my judgment, my pronouncements gave validity to an elections, that the figures outweighed the accredited voters. And like they said, I didn't try to tell you that all the 300 and whatever units that they tabulated or probably computed those figures to give Opuzodima that quantum leap to become the actual winner. All the people in that polling unit voted for Opuzodima. Even for people that don't know about politics, I know of PDP and APC. That is the party with the largest structure in Nigeria. Even at the remotest part of this country, you find those two parties there. You cannot tell me that in those units, there are no PDP agents. There are no PDP party faithful that will now go and all of them will vote for. If Opuzodima was that popular and was that loved by the people, then the whole Imo State would have voted for him.
All right. Okay.
Not even under Maurice Iwu.
Can I illuminate something which is said so that we can clear that?
All right.
You know, on the issue of the fact that if you don't participate in all the processes, Opuzodima did not participate in the primaries. Uche Nwosu did not participate in the election using APC. The problem with that, it's correct. Those are facts. But the lawyers for Emeka Ihedioha, the former governor, as what you want to call it, did not make those pleas. Supreme Court will not just award it. They will not conjure things. You must make those claims in your counter claims.
But the Supreme Court was the one that came up with a pronouncement. But Supreme Court came up with it wasn't even the prayers of Emeka Ihedioha that brought about that pronouncement by the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court, it was the appeal of Nwosu that brought about that pronouncement by the Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court will not just have that deliberate amnesia or forgetfulness to forget that they just made a pronouncement that has such import on the case at hand.
The onus is on the defense or the applicant's counsel, you know, to make those submissions to the court. The court does not award, it's not a bazaar.
We know.
They do not award gifts. You will come out, you will state your case, and they will look at your case and look at the other case. If you fail to make some pleadings, then that is your own fault. You know?
But my argument is this. It wasn't the prayers, it wasn't the cause of this litigation and probably the tribunal case that brought about.
It's different here.
It was a different matter that it was at the Supreme Court. Supreme Court gave the pronouncement. So Supreme Court in its wisdom, if there are actually people with wisdom, should know that they've given a pronouncement related to this matter. And when you are given a new pronouncement, you must consider what is done. Don't let us make excuse for them. Nobody's asking them to give us bazaar or give us something. They are the one that made this pronouncement. It wasn't Emeka Ihedioha that went there to make
the law does not work like that. You make your pleadings, you even make references to past cases and decisions made by the courts. That's how the law works.
But no,
if you fail to, they would only consider the pleadings which you have made. If you forget to refer to the fact that, look, you have decided these cases, you have resolved this, you have resolved this matter in so, you get cite the references. If you fail to do that, they will only take into consideration. Unfortunately, that's how the courts work. Take into consideration.
But before we go, I'm still curious here, please. But before we go, no, the lawyers of Emeka did not assume or imagine, if you say the Supreme Court will come up with this magic.
Okay, well, we can only postulate a lot of things there. I'm sure we're still waiting for the Supreme Court's breakdown of their judgment, and then we can postulate more ideas there. But so far, so good. We have the Supreme Court's verdict, and of course, and that is, we have Hope Uzodinma as the governor of Imo State.